Hey everyone, Geophysicist Stefan Burns here. The Earth right now is supercharged with energy, and this means that we could have some significant geologic events to unfold over the next few days, and actually the forecast is for about the next 2 weeks. We had a solar storm impact come in about 24 hours ago. It took 12 hours to warm up, but then it flipped to a negative configuration. It strengthened, and that sent us into a strong G3 plus geomagnetic storm. Big swings in Earth's magnetic field generated by the movement and flow of plasma in Earth's ionosphere. And well, there was more plasma there to begin with because of all the crazy solar flare activity that we've had over the past 2 weeks. You see that with these sunspots here just going absolutely bonkers starting on the 30th of June. Before that, they were quite big and there was low grade activity from them as they transit from here to center, but nothing exceptional. Then they started to go off. We've had dozens of M-class flares. We had a 1.1 X-class flare. And well, you may remember that on the 30th of June is when we had an unexpected Kreutz sun grazer comet fly in and vaporize in front of the sunspots. And that's precisely then when a 5.8 M-class flare struck. That's then when all the activity started up. So showing some of the connections between our space environment and our sun. And quick interjection, right as I was editing this video, a 1.31 X-class flare just blasted off, and not from our sunspots over here, but as you saw from the other side, from our new sunspot rotating into view. So it looks like this new burst of activity is probably going to continue for that rotation across 2 weeks time. So we're not done with solar flare activity. We're clearly back in business. The second X-class flare now in this 2-week sequence. This triggered a R3 radio blackout here in between California and Hawaii. We've been having tons of solar flare activity just in general, but a lot of the big ones, if you've been noticing, have been hitting over North America or in this zone right there. So California, again, really being charged up by this. But the latest solar flare now is this 1.3 X-class flare from the limb. And well, there's more than just that. We have a coronal hole on the sun that's rotating into view, will be Earth's center and then geoeffective in about 5 to 6 days. That takes us to around the 9th of July. And well, this is significant because these coronal holes are very well correlated with earthquake activity. And well, it's a causal connection, I would argue, because how do you get more causal than the sun? So these coronal holes, specifically when they are cutting through the solar equator and they're large and they have a significant high-speed stream to them, that's when you can really start to act as a trigger on critically stressed faults. We also see connections with geomagnetic storming and earthquake activity, solar flaring and earthquake activity. Basically across the board, there are links and connections between the sun and geologic vents here on Earth. So this coronal hole high-speed stream, it does have a negative polarity, meaning it'll connect even better to Earth with its magnetic field. And the last time we saw this coronal hole was with the magnitude 7.8 earthquake that struck the Philippines. We were still in that coronal hole high-speed stream back then at the turn of the 8th of June, Universal Time. It occurred at the very end of June 7th, Universal Time. We were also in a coronal hole high-speed stream right as the earthquakes in Venezuela and Japan popped off. So that's the magnitude 7.5 and 7.2 in Venezuela, and then the magnitude 7.2 in Japan, all within 30 minutes and just about an hour after that high-speed stream really ramped up in velocity to about 600 kilometers per second. So things have been very, very active over the past 2 weeks because of this solar flare activity, and this is continuing likely because we do have a new sunspot group rotating in right here, though it's just one group, it's not 4, but well, 2 of those actually rapidly grew on the sun. So you see that also flaring at the end there. So it looks like we're going to continue to have this ionization of the upper atmosphere and more plasma generated as we go forward in time. This solar storm impact is still active right now. We are still in G1, G2 conditions. We spiked up again to G3 plus conditions, and we have some very significant planetary alignments occurring at this time. The outer planets are in this ultra rare basket configuration, and well, right now we have a Mars-Uranus conjunction. On the 12th of July, we have a Mercury cazimi, so it'll be an inferior conjunction. Mercury just turned retrograde. We have the new moon on the 14th, and shortly after that we have a cazimi of Jupiter, and that's always a big event in and of itself. So a lot is happening right now. Let's get right into it. Now, right from the get-go, I want to show you some of the aurora that came in from this solar storm impact. An incredible photo from Jin Tang here. I will link him in the video description down below, and we see not only aurora but also red sprites, and so we are seeing luminescent plasma across multiple layers of the atmosphere. These are incredibly powerful electric discharges. They're occurring around 50 to 70 kilometers up, and while aurora generally start about 100 kilometers up, but they can go up to 200, 300, 400 kilometers up. And so this is showing us just how much energy and plasma was in Earth's atmosphere last night. It's still active right now. We are in a G2 storm as I speak. Here we have our HB60 index, so we can see this geomagnetic activity. This is a 1 hour measure of magnetic volatility, like the KP index by higher resolution. Here we see that our HB60 index actually went up to a G4 minus level. But if you average it out over 3 hours, it was a G3 plus storm for that period of time, some G2 activity. And while we had this second burst here, we are starting to finally cool off, but we are still in it at this moment in time. Here we have our real-time solar wind, and this is that solar storm that came in. So the first 12 hours were choppy. This is when I did my live stream yesterday. It just strengthened. I talked about the possibility of it flipping into this negative configuration. That's exactly what happened. We see that the velocity went up all the way to about 640 kilometers per second right here. The density stayed quite high, only dropping out a little bit. But the main thing that drove this storm was the fact that it flipped strongly negative while the field strength stayed high. And then, of course, it was more strong than you would think because of how charged up the ionosphere due to all this solar flare activity. Here's our KP index. You see that we're still in it. We'll have the radiation belt surrounding our planet recharge after this geomagnetic storm. They're usually the most energetically charged after a geomagnetic storm, but they will drop out and precipitate their ions down into the ionosphere and help drive the aurora and more during the actual impact itself. So our 7-day electron flux, as you can see, it's now quite low, but it'll get well up here in just probably 3 days or so. So this is going to line up with that window I mentioned with the coronal hole high-speed stream impact. So we can see our X-ray flux for the past 7 days here. And well, it's been quite wild. Again, remember that Sun Grazer comet came in on the 30th. There's that 5.8 M-class flare, the 1.1 X-class flare, tons of other activity. Okay, we can actually see some of our most recent activity here. This coming from the limb of the sun, but this being quite wild. Check this out. This is our halo CME visual there showing the coronal shock wave, and we get 2 separate solar flares. So that was quite significant, but not really aimed at us. But this sort of explosion, should it occur from further towards the limb or even slightly behind the sun, will probably generate a radiation storm. We did have our protons bump up actually about 10x for our greater than 10 megaelectron volt protons just over the past 24 hours because of all the solar explosions occurring and more. But we can see our longer view of X-ray flux here by going to heliotime, and we see that this is going back quite some time. So we're going all the way back here to the 20th of June or so. So we see that we had a sequence of M-class flares and baselines just been kicking up. Now we have a little 1 day gap there. The activity was basically just like this. But again, you see how all of a sudden things really started going nuts around the 30th. We had the full moon, and while things are still elevated, we just had a 1.31 X-class flare just blasted off from our new sunspot group rotating in. So yes, it looks like things will be very, very active with this sunspot over the next 2 weeks as it transits. And all this is stacked on top of the unique astronomical alignments that are occurring at this moment in time. So if you got out early this morning and you found Mars, you were also looking at Uranus because we've had a Mars-Uranus conjunction. We have this set here for today. We see Uranus right there, Mars. This is our true sky astronomical chart. So this is plotting where the planets are. And I also have Eris, a dwarf planet in here, you know, Pluto, where they are in relation to the constellations, and all 13 of them, including Ophiuchus, true to size. So this is an astronomical chart. And well, you'll notice that we have this beautiful basket configuration. This is very, very rare. So you have Pluto here in a trine to that Mars-Uranus conjunction. You have Neptune here in a trine to Jupiter, Jupiter opposite to Pluto, and sextiles connecting them all together. So what we're having is Mars participating in this larger configuration with the outer planets. So this inner-outer harmony is occurring. You know, this they're working together. We also have the moon sweeping through the basket now as it approaches the sun for a new moon on the 14th. And well, 2 days before that, we will have Mercury cazimi, because Mercury is retrograde now. It never fully conjuncted Jupiter, got close. It's retrograde. And let me go forward in time for you to the 12th of July. We see Mercury there getting closer and closer and closer. There is that inferior conjunction of Mercury. The moon sweeping across all these sensitive points, activating that sacred geometry, that basket configuration. And then shortly after this inferior conjunction, we have the moon come in. So we see we're getting pretty close to our new moon right there on the 13th. So 13th, 14th of July is when the moon will be conjunct the sun. It'll be out during the day, and just like during the night, the sun's on the other side of the earth. Same with the moon. So you don't see the moon during a new moon. Then eventually the sun will continue to move. Jupiter is also moving forward, but the sun will catch up to Jupiter, and we will have a Jupiter cazimi, though that is later in the month. So that's all the way at the end of July right here, as you can see on the 28th. But the next 10 days are really pretty important and critical, I would say, as it relates to earthquake activity, because of this coronal hole high-speed stream that we have coming in, because we were in that coronal hole high-speed stream for the magnitude 7.8 earthquake that struck the Philippines. Again, that was back late on the 7th of June. We can look at that data right here. So here again is our solar wind data. And you'll notice our KP index right here on the 5th of June reached a G2 plus level. So that's from that high-speed stream impact. We see that the velocity went all the way up to above 700 kilometers per second, okay? And the density wasn't that high. Usually the density is low in these high-speed streams. But we see if we go to the end of the 7th right here, it was at 2300 and a little bit of change, universal time. Right about there on the 7th is when this earthquake popped off. Clearly still in this high-speed stream, though a little bit after the geomagnetic storm. And that's often what we see, is that there is this connection to earthquake activity in geomagnetic storms, but there is a time delay to it. I mean, sometimes it just happens at the same time. Maybe it's just coincidence, maybe it is a trigger that's just synchronized at that moment. Usually there's a time delay. Now, if we go forward to Venezuela, you will see this other coronal hole high-speed stream impact here, okay? And we had that occur with Venezuela and Japan right here, right when the high-speed stream clicked into over 600 kilometers per second. You know, we're in it now. Well, that's exactly when all three of those earthquakes popped off. So this is not a coronal hole high-speed stream impact that we've had. It has been a solar storm impact, but we will be getting that coronal hole high-speed stream to come in about 5 days. It'll be geoeffective, and then we'll be in that for 3-4 days. I'm really looking for like the 9th of July to the 14th for being the most critical time window for high magnitude seismic activity. Here we see the most significant earthquakes during this time frame. The USGS has this earthquake in Japan at 6.9. That's a 7.2 according to the Japanese. Keep that in mind. And some of the research connections show that the Western Pacific is more connected in to these space weather changes than the other side of the Ring of Fire. So we don't know exactly why, but that's what the observational evidence is suggesting, though our data sets are fairly limited overall. They're not 10,000 years in length, but we do see that. And in general, this has been antipodal activity. So Venezuela there, the antipode for Venezuela is just right here to the south And usually if there's back and forth earthquake activity ping-ponging through the Earth, it's usually not exactly on the antipode. There's some movement, or that stress vector deflects around the inner core for some reason. I can't fully explain why, but there's usually 5 to 15% deviation from the antipode. And well, that lands you right in this zone here where you have the 7.8 Philippines plus multiple magnitude 6 earthquakes. So I don't know if that vector is going to stay dominant with this next coronal hole high-speed stream impact. If we do get a big earthquake to pop off, it's possible that we get some more activity over here, maybe in the Caribbean. It could creep up a little bit. You know, we're looking at California very closely. Colombia, certainly, now that there's been an earthquake here in Venezuela, Colombia's looking pretty hot and definitely at a higher risk. And all of Central America and this subduction zone is now implicated as well with that. Though these quakes that carry on and follow up afterwards in this region, it could be weeks, months, maybe even like a year or two from now. The seismic wave that's generated from these big earthquakes loads into these faults, but it depends on their stress that they're holding on to already, their strain accumulation. And well, if there is still plenty of stress to accommodate, well, it'll get it closer to rupture, but it may not cause it to rupture immediately. So these are some of the areas that I'm looking at, but we could see more follow-up activity here, perhaps Papua New Guinea. We haven't been seeing, as you see, over the past month, and actually for 2026, we haven't really seen any big activity with Papua New Guinea, whereas we've had multiple magnitude 7s this year across the whole gamut. So that's one area I'm watching, but Japan's been exceptionally active. I would not be surprised to see activity up there or anywhere connecting them in. We actually just recently, if we go to our weekly view here, you'll see this, just recently had some earthquakes fill in between these main centers of activity. So we had this 5.9 right there, south of Kamchatka, side of the big megaquake. Then we had a 6.1 strike here, south of Japan, in between Taiwan and Japan. And then also we had this 6.2 there, Indonesia. And it was actually sequenced pinging up over 6 hours, 6.2, 6.1, 5.9. So just lots of activity right now. And this coronal hole could set everything off. We've had a big geomagnetic storm now. Many people saw aurora across the United States, some early fireworks for all the Yanks out there. This energization of the Earth is going to continue. So we have a lot that's happening right now. No guarantee that we are going to have something bigger, but in general, when I look at that Mars-Uranus conjunction, I don't really feel like we fully express that energy out, because Uranus is representative of electricity, electromagnetism, sudden disruptions, even like earthquake activity itself. And I just feel like this really hasn't fully expressed itself yet. So we could very well have some big activity happen over the next week. We see this conjunction right there, and we see the larger basket configuration if we zoom out. Here we have Pluto in the sextile to Neptune, in a sextile to Uranus, in a sextile to Jupiter, and there's that opposition cutting through. That is a big opposition. This is a 14-year cycle, the Jupiter, well, it's actually a 12-year cycle, 12 to 13-year cycle, Jupiter-Pluto, and so you don't get these Jupiter-Pluto oppositions every day. And well, these sort of harmonic aspects are quite rare. So this Pluto-Neptune sextile is one of the closing sextiles for the conjunction that they had back in the late 1800s, like 1892 basically. And then this Pluto-Uranus trine, that goes back to the Pluto-Uranus conjunction of 65 and 66, 1965 and 1966. So there's tons of internected energies here, all active at the same time. And we can't forget that our moon now, after having done a full moon, is sweeping through the basket, and we will have this Mercury inferior conjunction coming up right here. You see that, that's the 12th of July. That's when we have that. And then shortly afterwards, we have that new moon. And then we have these alignments with Jupiter. So a lot happening right now. Mars, Uranus, classic signature for big, sudden, energetic disruptions. And Taurus here, representative of the Earth itself. It's really a perfect signature for perhaps some big earthquake activity. It's, well, top of my radar effectively. So that is your forecast for today. I've been your host, Stefan Burns. Thank you all so much for watching. Please smash that thumbs up button to help this channel grow. Subscribe to stay up to date on everything that's happening energetically here on Earth. We cover earthquake activity, space weather, solar activity, and much more. I keep you up to date almost every single day. And for all those in the United States, happy 4th of July. May it be blessed. Let us all be reminded as to the true spirit and reason for the signing of the Declaration of Independence 250 years ago now to the day, which set off a wave of revolutions around the world in the years and decades that followed. It was a no to tyranny. It was a no to injustice. Instead, people realized we can govern ourselves. We're already self-reliant, sovereign. There are universal human rights that exist that are being encroached upon. It's time to make a change, and to be a true patriot was to actually do things to further that agenda. It wasn't just waving a flag. It also wasn't just soldiers and muskets. It was also hunters and scouts with bows and arrows. It was authors. It was poets. It was people like Thomas Paine writing Common Sense, and people waking up and realizing that they have more power than they may think they do, and together enacting change in such a way to create a new country of freedom based upon individual liberty. So happy 4th of July, happy Independence Day. There are many things that each and every single one of us can do to exert our independence over many of the authoritarian control structures that exist and are being imposed right now. We just look at the tax code. Just look at all the flock cameras that are going up. There are many more things. So happy 4th of July. Wishing each and every single one of you well. Please take care of yourselves. I'll see you all in the next video.